Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 189. Success and failure are equally disastrous. Tennessee Williams.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by TaylorSound.com. One of the most complicated problems I've had in my professional career is sound, and sound mixing, sound design is generally always very expensive. But Taylor Sound has come onto the scene and has done something pretty incredible. Like so many other things you have in the world today, now you can get your sound design online. They're offering flat promotional rates for commercials, music videos, short films, and any other video content that's short form. They're very affordable, and because you are an Indie Film Hustle Tribe member, will get 15% off your order. Just type in the word hustle in the post your brief section. That's TAILOR sound.com. So today is a first for the Indie Film Hustle podcast. I have a good friend of mine named Dave Bullis, who is a prolific podcaster like myself and hosts an amazing filmmaking podcast called the Dave Bullis Podcast. He's very creative that way. And he came to me and wanted to share a story with the tribe. He said, look, man, I made a huge, monstrous amount of mistakes making my pilot, my television pilot called Game Over. And I wanted to share with your tribe how not to make a television pilot and all of the mistakes he made and everything. I was like, well, no one's really ever offered to do that. I did that in a prior episode about how not to shoot a $50,000 short film, but I've never had a guest come on saying, hey, I made a whole bunch of mistakes. I want to tell you guys what I did and share that with you guys so you don't have to do the same thing. So as you know, I love this kind of stuff. So I wanted to give you as much of the truth of this industry as possible. And Dave has been so gracious and brave to come out and just lay himself out there like Mel Gibson in Braveheart at the end, right before they disembowel him. He just kind of puts it all out there for everybody to see, warts and all. And I am infinitely grateful for Dave for his sharing his journey. And a lot of the things that we're talking about for this TV pilot easily translates to feature films, short films, web series, anything else you're doing that's in production. A lot of these mistakes can be avoided in all of those different kind of formats. So prepare to take some notes because this is a doozy. Enjoy my conversation with Dave Bullis. I'd like to welcome to the show the legendary Dave Bullis. How you doing,
Legendary?
Dave? Legendary. You're a friend, so that's why I call you Legendary.
Thank you. Alex, it is really good to be here. You and I have been friends for years now, and it really is good to finally come on here, and I thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, you mean, Dave, for everybody listening, Dave has an amazing podcast as well, very humbly called the Dave Bullis Podcast, and he's prolific. He's got a lot of episodes out there. He's got a lot of great interviews as well. So I'll put links to his podcast in the show notes. But today we're here because it was a very unusual request. Dave reached out to me and said, hey, Alex, would you like to do a podcast interviewing me, telling people how not to shoot a pilot? And I said, sure. Because I did that before with my episode on how not to shoot a short film, $50,000 short film, but I would never ask anyone to go like, hey, you really didn't do well on that project. Can you tell us how you did it specifically? Like, it's not something I would do. So the audience knows I did not request this. Dave approached me with it, and I'm like, well, it'd be a great learning experience. I want to know what you did wrong. I want to know what, and I think a lot of people listening will hopefully find some solace in what you have to say. But first and foremost, Dave, why did you want to do this?
Well, it's because I'm actually going to end up releasing it onto YouTube. And basically, I just wanted to talk about, all the things that have happened with it. I mean, for a while, it sat on a hard drive and did absolutely nothing. It just sat there almost like the proverbial redheaded stepchild.
Everyone he's redheaded.
Yeah, speaking from experience, if they, so basically what happens was it just laid there on a hard drive, doing absolutely nothing. And every so often, I would get an email like, hey, whatever happened to that thing you were doing? And people who listen to the podcast, they hear me talk about it from time to time. Well, I actually ended up meeting a couple people, and I actually started telling them about it. And these are people who are managers out in LA. And, I was just talking to them, basically off the cuff. This wasn't like a serious pitch meeting or anything. And they were like, wow, that sounds pretty interesting. Is it done? Like, where is it? And I said, it's on my hard drive, and they unanimously said, you should really get that back up and just post it. With everything else you're doing, what's the harm now?
Yeah,
hey,
absolutely.
You know what? If it's terrible, they said, who cares? Because you're going to have a bunch of other stuff that, you've done later on and say, hey, look, I improved. And or vice versa, at least get some eyes on you. And I mean, I've seen other filmmakers recently, who've just put stuff up there. And, they've gotten just, different people. It's not it's a means to an end. You know what I mean? It's to get your foot out there. And plus, if there's one thing I know about Alex, it's being mediocre. So,
Nice. So what's the name of the pilot?
Game Over.
Game Over. Very, very, very good name. Very good name for very poetic.
Yeah, thank you. It was over before it began.
So tell me, so take us through the journey. Weave the tale. How did the project come to be?
Okay, so basically in about 2009, I actually had this idea that I've been playing around with for a few years. I actually used to work at a GameStop. Do you know what GameStop is, Alex?
I do, sir. Yes, it's still around. I worked at video stores, but I do know what a GameStop is.
Yeah, there is some overlap there, but because working at those types of game stores, I've met different people along the way, and we always trade stories. But anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting off a little topic. Mm-hmm. But what happens is with when I worked I worked at GameStop, and I always had these ideas in my head. I'm like, I should just do something with this. I had an idea that I'm kicking around, so I actually made a couple of short films, and finally I said, you know what? If I can make a 25, 30-minute film, hell, I can make a TV pilot. And I saw what It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia did. Mm-hmm. They made a pilot for I think it was $5, and they pitched it to FX and said, this is what it could be like. Mm-hmm. And, they eventually FX picked it up, etc. So I started to formulate this idea. Along the way, I've picked up a couple of different people I've wanted to work with, picked up a couple of people I picked up who I thought were going to add something to it. We ended up pitching it to the number 2 or number 3 biggest video game distributor in America, mm-hmm. a video game store called GamerDoc. Mm-hmm. They absolutely loved it. I actually had a chance to pitch to the president of the company. Mm-hmm. He actually personally called me, loved it. Long story short, they backed out. I then pitched it to an independent game store. He loved it. Long story short, he backed out. I then got to shoot it at a multi-million-dollar studio they just built here, right in Philly. It's actually in Aston, mm-hmm. Pennsylvania. I'm actually from Aston, by the way, Alex. Mm-hmm. I know I tell everyone I'm from Philly, but mm-hmm. Nobody knows where Aston is.
Yeah, I say I'm from Miami, but I'm really from Fort Lauderdale.
So. Well, see, I actually know what Fort Lauderdale is. Like Aston, people go, "What the hell is that?" I go, "It's right by Philly." Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, they just built this studio, and I was able to not only film it there but hold auditions there. Oh, and right after Earth was literally filming right where we were. With M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, they built that for M. Night. I know people in Philly. They're like, yeah, they basically built the entire film industry around one director, and it didn't go well originally.
Yeah. When we were shooting there, this is a funny little story. I was there with one of my producers, really good guy named Chris Priaminico, really really sweet guy, mm-hmm. and in walks a bunch of people, and I'm like, what the hell is this? It was all of the crews for the Bourne Supremacy, mm-hmm. World War Z was around that time. Mm-hmm. There were all these crews that were in the area looking for stuff, and they came to Sun Center to look to think about shooting on the 2 main sound stages. Well, we shot. We were on the property right next to the first sound stage. Well, people would walk in. They were like, "Oh, did a video game store used to be here?" And I said, "Yes, got them." So if the Hollywood people who have millions of dollars could be, sort of fooled by what I pulled together with like nothing, I was like, hell yeah, we got it.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
So that was actually one of the really cool moments. And then after, we filmed it. Oops, sorry, did you hear that?
Did the books finally fall on you?
No, my shade just fell down. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Sorry, edit that out. Okay,
we don't edit here, sir. Everything just flows.
Man, that was the books didn't fall on me, thank God.
By the way, just so everybody knows, every time I see Dave when we Skype, he's got just piles. It's like a hoarder's kind of books piling, like hoarders. But then he's got like Macho Man and a couple of WWF. But at any moment you just feel like, oh my God, that thing's gonna just fall on him and kill him. So when that fell, I automatically thought. Anyway, we digress. Continue, sir.
Fear for my safety, everybody. I'm a hoarder of books, but so after we shot it on this soundstage. It worked out beautifully. It was like serendipitous. That's the word that other people were using. I was in all the local Philly papers. Like, oh, Dave's how did he pull this off? That was a question I got asked a lot. And as soon as it was over, a lot of fallout happened between myself and somebody who was trying to claim ownership of the project, between myself, and not only was it between myself, but there was other problems that had boiled over with other members of the crew and cast and stuff like that. And I kind of had put out a lot of fires, which is really time consuming, and also it was really like I was getting pulled in all directions. And I actually edited the thing after I got a full-time job right around this time. So I started. So
stop for a second. Let's go back for a second. So you're being, other people are coming out and there's problems starting to be created, which none of this sounds new to me. I've had this happen on me, my projects early on and all this stuff. So other people were coming out trying to take credit. Did you not have contracts? Did you not have agreements in place?
I did. And here's the kicker to all this. So I'll just take a huge step back. When I first started doing this, I had contracts with everybody. Everyone who had to come on had a contract. Mm-hmm. One guy refused it, and he said, "This is Philly. We don't sign contracts. Who cares?" I said, "You're leaving yourself at risk." I said, as soon as GamerDoc joined up, he like snapped. He was like, "Oh my God, how you were taking this and that." This guy approached me to just read the script and give feedback. Mm-hmm. There was no mention of any of this other stuff. Well, the first thing he had asked for a couple of amenities. I declined them. I mean, this got into a messy. I got a lawyer. He got a lawyer, and I said, and here's the first lawyer was like, look, she goes, I don't. Well, I got bad legal advice from her at the end. Mm-hmm. The second lawyer I got was like, can I curse on this, Alex?
I'd prefer not, but
okay, I'm sorry.
We can. If an F-bomb drops by, that's fine. But I'm trying to keep it cleaner these days.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, because I'm from Philly, we curse.
I curse too. Look, I've had episodes I've cursed like a sailor. But if an F-bomb drops, it's okay.
Okay, I'll try to refrain. So basically, my second lawyer was like, "Screw this guy. Mm-hmm. He doesn't own anything." So we basically booted him from the project, and he tried to come back in and say, "Well, I'm owed this and I'm owed that." And finally, I was like, I don't know if a single. Everyone was like, "Is this guy insane?" And I said, "Yes, he's fucking insane." I'm sorry. See, I already did it. I'm sorry.
It's all good. Go ahead. Continue.
So I said, "Yes, he is absolutely insane." And we were it was such a deep web. And all this started from two things. And so this is how I failed by doing this. And I want everyone to learn from this. I don't care if you're doing a project that's everyone's working for free and you're just doing this for the hell of it mm-hmm. and just for the fun of it. Everyone has to sign a contract. Yeah. I don't care who it is. Well, when this guy refused, I mean, I was like, "Hey, it's on you, buddy."
No, so you should have just said no. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when he said, well, because he wanted to come on, because he wanted to learn, he said. Wanted to learn how everything, because he saw like what we were putting together, and slowly but surely he was trying to ask for like a co-producer credit. He was trying to get a co-director credit, and I would
co-director.
Say no. Wow. And here's the kicker too. He would call me up, And he would say two things to me every single time. Every time he called me up, he would say how talented he was, and also how much he hated one of my producers. Which every time, and I would say, do you have like a problem or something with him?
Tourette's, like a Tourette's.
Yeah. Well, I you know what I think it was. Years after this all happened, and we had this falling out, and all of this stuff kept happening. We were always trying to save the project. My one producer and I. And my one producer and I would always say, you know, he's a, I don't want to sound like I'm bagging on religion, but he's a Christian, and it always comes out that he likes to help humanity, you know? Mm-hmm. And he is a hire fast, fire slow type of guy, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that sort of was always, hey, Dave, let's just ignore him. He doesn't get involved in anything. And suddenly, you know, he and I were at odds because I wanted to just get rid of this guy. And it just, again, here we are. We're instead of worrying about producing the short here or producing the TV pilot, we're sitting here talking to lawyers about going through over emails and going over all this other stuff, all because he said he was going to sue us if we went ahead with this. And now I'm sitting here going, this can't be happening. I said, how does this guy? So eventually,
all of this stuff would have been completely taken care of if he would have signed an agreement, or you would have just gave him his walking papers the second he did not want to sign anything.
Yeah, because this time he didn't want to sign anything, it wasn't a big deal at that point. Like I was just like, hey, it's on you, dude.
It's never a big deal at the beginning. It's always a big deal when you win the Oscar.
Exactly. When GamerDoc signed on, that's when everything changed. Well, when they backed out, I said, hey, look, you know what? We don't have it anymore, so it doesn't even matter anymore. Mm-hmm. The independent game store came on, and then they wanted to, you know, they were going to give us a little bit of money, not much at all. And see, GamerDoc was cool, Alex, because they were going to let us use a store. They were going to give us $10,000 to just work on the project, and they were going to give us a couple other amenities. Mm-hmm. This little independent one was like, we can't, you know, he's like, I don't have anywhere near the reach that they have. And the reason, by the way, that GamerDoc dropped out was because they said, I'm going to be honest with you, Dave, we don't have the extra money. Mm-hmm. And that's a bad sign if you can't find $10,000 out of your marketing budget to put something towards something new and fresh. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm just going to say, and you know, there's not too many GamerDocs around anymore. But
right.
So then we go to this little independent store. I actually found him. I actually emailed him, and I said, this is what it is. And he said, sure, you know, I'd love to do it. He actually, this is, again, a little tip from me to your audiences. When you pitch locations, don't be surprised when they back out. Even when everything seems like it's peaches and cream and everything seems like it's going right. I was actually bringing him a contract to sign just to, you know, for the location. Mm-hmm. I had a copy of our insurance bond. Mm-hmm. I had everything. And he goes, I called him. I said, I'm coming up now. And he goes, oh, yeah, actually, he's like, I can't actually let you film here anymore. And I said, what happened? And he just was real aloof about it. I have a feeling that somebody along the lines told him, oh, these guys are ripping you off or something like that, or some friend got in his ear. And, you know, now I said to him, I said, well, you won't even let me help you out? And he goes, I don't want to be stuck babysitting you guys. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, here we go. So I just said, you know what? I'll talk to you later when you settle down. Because again, I always try to kill with kindness, even when I'm clearly in the right. And he emailed me later, and he was like, no, it's never going to happen. He goes, you can't film here. So wow. By chance, I was at the Pennsylvania Film Industry Association meeting, which is PAFIA, and I was at a table, and we were just there for this producer was in town. I forget which producer it was, but so by chance, guess who sat at my table? But Mr. Rotwit, who is the CEO of Sun Center Studios. Mm-hmm. So I actually shake his hand, we get to talking, and he goes, oh, you know, this sounds cool, and this and that, and gives me his card. He says, call me anytime. Well, I needed some help. I reached out. He goes, you can have your auditions here. Reached out to him again after the GamerDoc, and then the independent store backed out. Said, you know what, you can film here. We redid a bunch of stuff. We offered a lot of value to him because not only did we get a ton of freaking press, but we also fixed up this one area that hadn't been fixed up yet. And I'm going to give you some photos, Alex, to check out of how we actually fixed it up from like almost nothing, from like it was just like a cement slab to set decorating the whole area.
So where's the money coming from for all of this?
So the money is coming from a couple different areas.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
The first thing we did was I just basically started using my own cash. No credit cards, nothing like that. And what I was doing, and so the auditions were free, I believe, or maybe like $100. And to pay for the cost, we also crowdfunded. And this is when Indiegogo was first started, and nobody knew what the hell it was. And it was like, you could. I mean, my God. I mean, I think we were actually on the front page for a while. I don't know, maybe because there was nobody else. There was nobody else on there. It was like it was like a ghost town, And then all of a sudden, now everybody has a crowdfunding campaign. But well, back in those days, like people were like, "What is this called? What issues?" People were like, "What is this? Like, am I buying equity in the project?" No, it's crowdfunding. And even my producers were like real skeptical about doing it. And eventually, we also opened up a PayPal. The PayPal account got blocked by because they thought it was a scam because Game Over was the name of was some scam that was going around. So they blocked it. We're like, what the hell is this? I had to call. I mean, like Alex, I'm telling you, there were so many times where I was like, what the hell am I doing to myself? Like, why am I subjecting myself to this? And so finally,
how much cash did you put into this thing?
After all is said and done, around I'd say about 10 to 12,000.
Oh God! Out of your pocket?
Well, some was crowdfunded, some out of my own pocket. We got donations through PayPal, so I would say more like 40 to 50 out of my own pocket, and then the other half through donations and stuff like that.
Wow, man, that's still a lot of cash.
Yeah, I know. It's still a lot of cash. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I was young, Alex. I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
Hey.
But
I mean, I spent 50, so multiple times in my career. So I've learned not to do this anymore.
Oh, seriously, man. It's and the thing was, so people usually ask how I got all the props, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I got all the props. Number one was right down the street from Sun Center was a Blockbuster that was going out of business. I walked in and I started talking to the people who were basically gutting the store, and she goes, "You can buy whatever you want." And she goes, but you'll have to take it out of here. She goes, I can't help you with anything. We bought the counter. We bought the signs. Right. We bought all the racks. Nice. And and we bought a lot of like the empty cases for games and stuff like that. And I think that whole thing, I honestly think it came to like $200 maybe at most.
Oh Jesus! A counter for under? Geez, they just wanted to get it out there, I guess. Yeah.
Oh well, we actually said and here's another thing was I actually said to the building manager, I actually knew him, and I said, hey, how about this? How about I film in there? You leave it up, and after it's done, we'll break it all down. And he goes, Dave, I wish I could say yes, but there's businesses in that are still around, and if you guys disrupt them in any way, they're going to come to me and say, what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? And I still don't buy that argument from him because it was on the end, and it was away from every other place. Like
it doesn't matter. Still, I get it. I get his. I get completely 100% get his point of view. It's a liability that he doesn't want to deal with. I get it. It makes sense. But I get you. But it's not a win-win for him at this point in the game. So, but anyway, regardless, so you got this insane production value because you bought everything for a couple $100, and you start building it out into this amazing location studio that you got. Did you pay anything for it or just a little bit?
We paid a little bit, and I mean, he charged us, I think, a minuscule amount. Actually, that's where we're probably. It was like $250, $300 a day.
That's nothing.
Yeah, I know that is nothing. I know, right?
It's like nothing. That's a gift. All right, so you did all that. So now you've got some sort of production going on. How are you? So you're starting production. How many days did you shoot, by the way?
We shot for 4.
4 days. Now, please, you start on a Friday. Who's the director?
I'm the director.
You're the director. Okay.
Yes.
How did that go?
It actually went a lot better than the rest of the story.
Okay. So I'm not making fun of you as a director, but I know some of the things that happened to you as a director. So that's why I was being a little sarcastic with the question. So tell me.
Well, here's the thing. It was the best cast I've ever directed. I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay.
They were some really good people. Mm-hmm. The problem I had was that people kept coming up to me and asking me to solve production problems. And I said, guys, I don't know why. Because I mean, okay, I'm going to toot my own horn here. Because people would always say to me, like, Dave, you're a great problem solver. Like, you can solve a problem like that. And I said, hey, that's I really appreciate that, but I'm not wearing the producer hat right now. I'm wearing the director hat. You're supposed to solve this. And it was just unbelievable. And I'm going to tell you where it kind of came to a head. And I'm going to little funny story. This is the second day, which was the worst day of all filming, was that second day. Because that first day, Alex, I'm going to be honest with you. I was finally a little happy. I was like, oh my God, this is actually coming together. Holy crap. That second day, it all just got torn down and burned, and everyone just kicked ashes onto me. So basically, the second day ended with me and my producer getting into an argument in front of everybody. She came onto set. I kid you not, dressed as the Black Swan in full makeup. And I was just like, the first thing I said to her was, I go, she comes in and tells me how unprofessional that this day has been, and she just starts harping on me, and I lost my mind.
So, all right, so stop for a second, because because there's just too much. It's like a machine. It's like a Gatling gun going on here. There's just too much stuff coming at you, and I want the audience to understand, because I'm here to kind of to highlight the lessons of what went wrong and what you could have done differently, from my point of view, at least. So, so day one, you're the director. You didn't have a proper first AD or a professional first AD and or line producer to handle the production problems. Is that correct?
Well, he actually was solved the first day. I did have a first AD. He wasn't like a pro first AD, but him and my producers, it was more of my actual producers coming in and being like, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I was referring to.
So the producers that you had on board, I'm assuming this was their kind of first barbecue?
No.
So these are professional producers. They've done other things in the past.
Yes, sir.
So then was it that they felt that for whatever reason they could push you around as a director because you were kind of a first-time director?
Well, this is what happened. Basically, and this is a lesson for everyone out there. Just because somebody has a credit in something does not mean they actually did
it. Very much true, sir. Yeah, I could put myself on IMDb that I worked on Avengers, but it ain't the truth. So,
I mean, and not to harp on or down crowdfunding, but I see people who are getting like, oh, we'll make you a producer if you give me $1,000. Oh yeah, and they get this credit, and then like they go around saying, hey, I produced this or this, but then they try to go on set to actually do producers' jobs, and it hits them like a frying pan in the face, man. They're like, what the hell am I doing?
Oh, I've had those guys. Ooh. Or early on, I could tell you stories. But yes, that's absolutely true. People say they're producers and say they're first ADs and say they're DPs, and you put the pressure on them and they just crack. And until you are, as a director or as a filmmaker, can tell what that is, that only takes time. That takes time. You got to build that kind of radar up to like smell like this guy doesn't know what he's doing, or this person doesn't know what they're doing. But so go ahead.
Yeah, and really that does help too, Alex, because you start to understand just by the things that people say and just how they act. And even when you meet them at like a networking party or whatever, you start to see who the professionals are and who really, I mean, thank God for social media, because social media, especially Facebook, you know how many people that I was going to work with who I'd go on their feed and it's just they're ranting and raving and they're just throwing people in the mud. At least when I do it, it's funny, Alex. Come on. but I mean, all kidding aside, it's like I sit there and I go, why would I ever work with this person? So it's just stuff like that I see, and I'm like, thank God for Facebook. I thought I'd never say that, but thank God for Facebook. So as just to continue my story about that second day, that basically is to the point where I actually took everyone out, like all my producers out, and I was like, we gotta talk. And this one guy who had the most set experience out of anybody was like, he goes, I was ready to follow you out. He goes, I thought you were going to kill all 3 of your producers in one foul swoop. He goes, I've never seen somebody so angry before. And I was like, really? He goes, your face was as red as a tomato. And I said,
and with the hair, it must have been a sight. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I look like the heat miser from
Inside Out.
Yeah,
the anger dude. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the angry. By the way, do you know somebody got me that doll for Christmas the other year with
of course
the
they did.
anger emoji?
Of course.
And
of course they did. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, right.
You sound so pleasant. I've never seen you angry, so you've always sound very pleasant to me.
You know what? I try to be. You know, I mean, this is what I am. I always want to be a nice guy and joke around and make a lot of jokes. But I mean, everyone has a limit. I've learned. I mean, as you've learned in life, Alex, even people who seem like so quiet and nice, they have a limit, and then it's like, boom. And that's what happened here. And plus, you got to remember too, I was dealing with all that BS from that guy who was trying to sue me. So like I needed and I was just like, it kept going more and more. It was like Michael Douglas from Falling Down. I was like, I just want a burger. God,
that was a great movie. I love that movie. That's such a great movie. So also, didn't you have a new DP introduced that day?
Yeah. Well, this is the kookiness of my ever evolving crew. I would turn around and there would be another person like just on crew, and I'm like, who are you? And they'd be like, hey Dave, I'm the whatever. I'm like, how did you get on here? I said, are you on the? So I'm sitting there going, are you on the insurance bond? Do they know you're here? And you know, stuff like that. And basically she was going to take over as DP, and I said, oh, okay. Because the other DP was still there, by the way, which was even kookier.
Okay, so okay. This is now just getting crazy. First of all, you hired the DP, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So then, who said that this other person was going to become the DP? Was there a problem on the first day with the other DP?
No, he actually said it, and the reason he said it, because I actually asked him about it. Well, he was like, she's so talented. He goes, she's way more talented than I am, and I said, I have. So I pulled him aside. I said, number one, I've never seen her work. Number two,
oh my God.
She has no clue of what the hell we're shooting. She has no clue whatsoever. And I said, hey, let's do this. I said, she can run first camera. And I said, but you have to work closely with her. And he was like, oh yeah. He goes, you know, that sounds fine. But he's like, trust me, Dave, she is a natural. And all this stuff, she's phenomenal. Whatever. Let me tell you something, Alex. I saw her footage when I was going back, and I had all the footage, and I'm looking through it. I don't think the woman could see. I
got it. Colorblind. Got it. Colorblind DP like an Ed Wood. Got it.
Well, I would take it a step further. Framing was way off. And
never seen a movie. Never seen a movie.
Never seen a movie. Never seen a movie. I don't even think she even knew what a camera was. Sweet person, but framing was completely off, and I had to depend on my second camera guy, who I want to give just a quick shout out to. His name is Mike Biaselli. He is a gentleman and a scholar, and I will never say a bad word about him. He toughed it out every day, and he was one of the unsung heroes who helped me stay sane during this time.
Got it.
And he was awesome, like a rock, and I'm so glad he was a part of it. And basically, you know, as we got through this day, I was just like, you know, what else could come at me? You know, what else could come at me? So as we grinded out this day, a little problem here, a little problem there.
Sure.
My producers backed out of a location and started arguing with me about a location. I said, guys, we're going to be there for 10 minutes tops. That took time, and it just us arguing with each other. And I'm like, I just don't get this. Because sorry?
No, so when did the Black Swan show up?
That was at the end of the day, at the complete end of the day.
Okay.
So
please explain that. Please explain that. You have to. You can't just drop that bomb. Please explain that.
One to the next story. No, but what happened was, so it was, you know, we're finishing up for the day. We were behind schedule, obviously, as you can tell from what I've been explaining about day 2. So we're a little behind schedule. And I'm saying, okay, and I was talking to some people, and I'm like, look, if we can just, you know, we're just going to chalk this up. I said, you know, to basically like a loss, and we're just going to suck it up, and we're going to do better tomorrow. You know, we can do better tomorrow. and we still have a little wiggle room because I actually built in more time on the schedule. She comes in dressed like the Black Swan in full makeup and everything.
Why?
She got bored, and the makeup designer was like, "Hey, I was practicing this or that." And I'm telling you, she comes in and starts telling me how unprofessional today had been, right in front of everybody.
Dressed as the Black Swan.
And I said, "You're going to tell me this dressed as the Black Swan that I'm unprofessional?" And she goes, "Oh, this has nothing to do with that, Dave." And I honestly, I said, "You're talking down to me in front of everybody." And since you want to, and she goes, "I'm not talking down to you." And we started going at it. And I mean, it was
Jesus.
So day 3. I actually no, and by the way, everyone wants to know what I said to them that night. And I said, "Look, you guys have every win that we had on the first day, we lost the second day." I said, "I don't know what happened. I don't know who's not talking to who." I said, and by the way, I was not this calm, by the way.
Obviously.
I was saying, we have to communicate. We have to depend on each other because that's what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. And I said, if there's any more BS, I'm going to can you in a heartbeat. And I said, please don't tempt me. And after this speech, suddenly everyone was working. The day 3 was actually productive. It was, and we actually had some cool people stop by from different film sets, and they were like, "Hey, this is blah blah blah." So it was actually really, really interesting, and it was fun, and it was a little. Then again, anything was better than day 2. So so basically, as we were finishing up, we had to go another day. So we waited another week, and we actually filmed it where I actually worked at the time, because we just needed a stock room and some weird just some weird pickup shots. But other than that, that was it. And we got all that, and I had all the footage, and the editor who I had was going to edit all this together. Well, we were going to have a party, basically like a fundraising party / launch party, and we're going to put all this together. Well, he said, "Hey, I'm going to edit the trailer. I really want to edit that trailer." So as I gave him the footage, obviously I gave him a copy of the footage. Well, I said to him, "Hey, when am I going to see this trailer? We're getting near to the launch party." And nothing. So the day of, I said, "Where the hell is this?" And he never responded. Nothing. I kept calling him. So I had to make one real quick on Premiere to bring there. Now, I want to also give a shout out to Rockstar, the guys, the great people who make GTA. They actually awarded me the key to Liberty City for making this pilot. Okay. I have it in a box in my room. It was so freaking cool, Alex. I don't know. I kind of geeked out for a second.
Sure. Fair enough.
You're probably like, "Oh God, look at this nerd."
It's okay, dude. I have a life-size Yoda in my house, in my room. Please.
Oh man, what a geek!
I know exactly.
But basically, all that happens, and I had this thing. I'm like, "Oh man, it's not gonna, it's not too good or whatever." Well, the guy who was trying to say that he owned part of it, he wanted to come and show his support for it. And I said, and he said he was going to bring some people, and I said, if you want to bring some, he brought 3 people, I brought 8 million, and it's a usual, because it's a little funny story too. He once told me that he when we launched the crowdfunding campaign for Game Over, he never mentioned it once, right? Never mentioned it once. I sat there and I said, if he doesn't want to mention it, I really don't give a crap either way. Well, he told me when he called me up one time that if he would mention it, it would get funded in a second. So I said, okay. I said, let's put your money where your mouth is. I said, mention it on your Facebook. Let's see it. Not one single person on Facebook, anything, gave in $1, and I kept a list of every single
sure. So it seems to me, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but again, I'm trying to put some perspective in this story. It seems to me that there's a lot of delusions of grandeur with the people that were involved in this project. Not you, but everybody, like your producers and this people, just these guys who think that they're bigger than who they are, and want to act like producers, but don't want to actually do the work. And I've run into these kind of people throughout my career, and it's one of the biggest mistakes filmmakers make, especially in the early part of their careers, or just when they're inexperienced, that they get bamboozled by these kind of human beings that are all about ego, and they want to live the entourage lifestyle, but they don't want to do the work. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say for one person, yes.
Okay.
The other people, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I will say that because this was a different kind of project. See, that's what I really want your listeners to gain. This wasn't like a lot of super inflated egos to begin with. It was a lot of actual people who were concerned and they wanted to make a good project.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
But it's the conflict of how to accomplish that, and I only one person who I made the movie with was a friend of mine. We're still friends, and we didn't have a blow up or anything. But it's just like I did my best to make sure I had a great cast and crew. Some left, some came on, some I don't talk to anymore. Some I still talk to pretty much maybe every week, and it's just building that team. And making sure that it's kind of like what they say about the military. You don't go to war with the army that you want. You go to war with the army that you have.
Yeah, I get you. And a lot of the soldiers were subpar.
They already look like they've been through a war.
Yeah, exactly. And you had issues with actors as well, and other crew people. I'm sure you have stories upon stories of that. But I mean. It just seems, because I'm thinking about, I'm putting myself in your position, and I'm like, okay, what would I have done differently? And I think it was just, from my point of view at least, it just seems like there was, the team that you assembled definitely was not cohesive, and there was a lack of experience on the team. Like there wasn't a really experienced, because no experienced producer would do what Black Swan did, like no one. And people don't sue for that. Like you don't do that kind of stuff. When there's nothing, it's frivolous. It's just more about, I need something to do, so I'm going to go mess with these guys. It just seems, I think it was a lot of it had to do with the casting of the team and being put together. Do you agree?
Yes, I concur. It's about the scope of the project. It's about expectations versus reality, and just like you alluded to, Alex, it's input versus output. I've noticed that when there's two different kinds of filmmakers and two different kinds of people in every role, you're either focused on the input or you're focused on the output. The people who are focused on the output are, you and I have both been there, Alex. I'm guilty of it too. I'm gonna make whatever this movie is or whatever X is, and it's going to go to Sundance. We're going to win $10 million. We're all going to move to Beverly Hills.
Sure.
We're all going to go into a jacuzzi, and that's focused on the output. The people who focus on the input are all about, I'm just going to live to the next moment of how I can make this better and this better and then this better. And then that's how, all these really cool projects get made. And that's what I've done my podcast too is, I want to dig below that surface and find out, how the heck did all these guys do this? How the heck did these people do that? And it just, you start to dig a little deeper, and there's there's a couple principles I can talk about right now. It's building a team of people that you can trust. It's if there is any problem, people, you hire slow, you fire fast. Yep. And that is a key in all aspects of life. And honestly, ask for referrals. Now the internet is a lot different than it was in 2010. Just because, social media is a lot bigger. It's different, actually. I should say it's different. And just because, I can go on right now. I could say, okay, who's Alex Ferrari? Oh, well, he's the guy from Indie Film Hustle, this or that. And people can go on and say, hey, who's Dave Bullis? Oh, he hosts this crappy podcast nobody listens to. And he made a TV pilot nobody's ever seen. So, all right.
But no, he's being very very humble. His podcast is not crappy, but now people will actually see this pilot. So what happened in post production? Please enlighten us on where the mistakes happened and what you should have done differently.
Sure thing. So in post production, I finally sat down to edit this thing myself. Again, I was speaking of the editor who just vanished, and basically, I started to edit this, and I actually was able to pitch it to some really cool people. And I'm a very good networker. I think that's one of the things that people usually pick up on, because they usually ask, how did you meet this person? How did you meet this person? It's because I that's just a really good skill that I have.
You're very lovable, Dave.
Thank you. I try to use it to my advantage wherever I can. I tell people I'm a real-life George Costanza.
Mm-hmm.
Costanza. Alex, you there?
I am. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I thought I lost you there for a second. But basically, I started editing myself, and I was able to pitch it to G4 right before they left because
G4,
Chris
yeah.
Gore and G4, and they actually said to me, this is exactly what we would have wanted, but we're actually going out of business and becoming the GQ channel. So see you later, kid.
Yeah.
But and I also got to talk to Jennifer Grassani, who's a wonderful, wonderful person, by the way. And I actually, talked to her about it, and she watched it and gave me a ton of tips. And she was like, "Look," she goes, "if I were you, Dave," she goes, "you can use this definitely as a way to get even a manager or something," because she goes, because you're actually out there doing stuff. See, and this is another thing that I've learned over the years is people think that if they get a manager or an agent, it's like immediate success. They're going to be like, "Oh, I'm on an easy streak now." That's just the first step in a long, long line, because basically they want to, especially managers, they want to see you're actually doing something. Because managers are in it for the long haul, agents are the quick sale. But if you're going to a manager and they're going to say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to work with Alex for the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years," I want to make sure he's actually out there doing stuff. He's motivated. I'm not going to put all this time and effort into him, and he just turns around and goes, "Yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore."
Yeah, exactly.
Or call up and be like, "Why haven't you gotten me work?" So,
right, right, exactly. And I think that's a big mistake a lot of filmmakers and actors and writers make. They think that an agent or a manager is the end all be all, but at the end of the day, they're just there to help. Sometimes it's all about you, and all the professionals that I talk to in the business, they're all about doing their own work and getting their own projects off the ground. And they said, "My agent doesn't do anything. He just hangs out and he negotiates the deals that I get him." But it's the truth.
And it's like, because they think it's basically where the agent or the manager's constantly calling them, being like, "Hey, I got you an audition, I got you this." Yeah, I mean, there is some of that, obviously, but I mean, it's not, you have to be out there, putting the hammer to the ground, and that's sort of what is missed a lot of times. Again, focused on the output, not the input.
So what were there more lawsuit threats coming into you in post-production?
No, there was none. That was all gone. I actually ended up firing Black Swan producer. I ended up firing that guy too, and I said, "Look," if you want to go out and because here's the thing with as we go back to this contract thing, and this is another thing I always tell people: get contracts. When I gave him finally I gave him a contract, he didn't want it, and that was the first time. Second time, he said that's when all this came out, that I owed him all this, and I said, "No way." Third time, he took it to the most expensive law firm in Philadelphia, and they charged him $500 to read it, and then he just went off about how I was ripping him off. I was like, no, no one told you to go to the most expensive law firm to ask about a contract reading. So basically, by the end, we still never had a contract, and I just said, "I don't owe you anything, and if you want to sue me, go ahead and sue me, but you're fired from the project, and that's the end of it. You don't own anything. You never have. You never will." And that was the end of that.
So I have to ask this question. You were the boss, so you literally you've hired all these people, right? There was nobody, none of these producers were putting their own money in. You weren't partners with them. You literally hired them?
Yes.
So why in God's green earth did you not just tell the Black Swan person, "You don't talk to me like this on set, you're fired," instantly? Why was that a thing? What was she doing of any value?
Well, to be honest with you, I should have fired her. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking back, I should have fired her. I guess I was trying to sort of hold out hope that maybe she was having an episode of temporary insanity, or maybe that she just made a bad decision. And as it turns out, I made a mistake. I should have listened to my first decision and fired her right off the bat. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of times where I should have fired people right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, and again, even if you're making a project for free, contracts, and don't be afraid to fire people. And that's why you don't hire your friends, because if you fire them, Alex, you can still be friends with the people. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you don't want to hire your friends, because if you fire them, you're not going to be friends anymore.
Right, exactly. So you tried post-production a couple times, right, to get it off the ground, because it took you how long did it take you to finish this project?
We're going on, I think this is about 6 or 7 years now.
Oh my God. What'd you shoot on, by the way?
We actually had two Panasonic HVXs, I think, or maybe a little more. We actually had the DP actually came with all his own stuff. He actually doesn't work in the business anymore. He actually sold it all off. Right. But he actually brought his own stuff. He came fully equipped, all that stuff, and I mean, I think that's what we shot on. I could be completely wrong though.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
But at the end of the day, the reason eventually, because I actually came back to it, I left it after the G4 pitch. I just sat on it, and I'm like, well, about a year or two later, I actually was talking to an agent who wanted to talk to me, and I showed him this, and he was, I guess I can say this, he was actually fired from his position. I'm not going to say his name or where he worked, but he was fired shortly then after, not because he talked to me.
I'm afraid of being fired, but I don't have a boss, so I'm okay.
Yeah. No. I was just saying, like, I if you ever hear me tell a bad story, Alex, I never tell the person's name. I always tell, you know what I mean? I always want people to learn, because I think if you tell someone's name,
no, you shouldn't. That's not professional.
Yeah.
That's not professional.
It's also because people don't listen to the story anymore. They're listening to the character. I'm trying to make sure people listen to like the moral of what I've learned. And I always want to make sure that's what I come across as. I know it sounds negative sometimes, but I'm like, oh, this guy sucks. But I never really mention. I hardly ever, rarely mention anyone's names. And basically, he basically was like, hey, listen, don't put this up anywhere. They're going to steal your idea, and because you never know who's out there. I said, oh, okay.
Where was this an LA agent?
Yeah, he was actually for the biggest firm out in LA.
Oh God, I mean, because that. All right, go ahead.
So another year later, I talked to another marketing person, and she's actually pretty big in the film industry. And she's like, Dave, put it up, just get it out there. I waited about another year or so, and I was doing other projects at this time too, which I could always come back and talk about. More failures, by the way, Alex. So
I think we're good right now, sir. You've been more than honest and more than helpful so far in this episode. So, I mean, you could just start a whole other podcast, like Dave Bullis' failed projects, the podcast.
It would be 200 epides.
Easy. Yeah, you know what? I'd have a handful of episodes there myself, sir. So
every episode, me just pouring a bottle out, just pouring a little glass of Jim Beam.
Can you imagine that? Yeah, I could. And then this bitch, she showed up just like Swan. It's crazy. I said, bitch, you ain't there, Oski. Anyway, sorry. That was the comedy for this episode, everyone. Thank you for listening. So I want to go back to I want to go through every stage of the production, and I want you to know what you think the biggest mistakes you made and the things that you should have done instead. So in pre-production, what was the biggest mistake you made? What should you have done differently?
Biggest mistake was not making sure everyone had a contract. Nobody comes on to set anything I've ever done since without signing an ironclad contract, because we had an LLC, we had an insurance bond, we had all that other stuff taken care of, but that was the big part. That was the biggest problem.
Okay, now production. What was the biggest, and what was the thing you would change?
Firing people fast. That would be the definite big thing, and making sure that everybody is on the same page. Even if you have to turn to a micromanager sometimes, it's as long as you kill people with kindness and just if you're not yelling at people, you don't need to. People respond to respect. People remember how you treated them. That's why I always try to treat people with fairness and kindness, and always try to crack jokes. And that's what I would have done though, is I would have fired people a lot faster.
Now in post-production.
Post-production, I really would have basically tried to find another editor more quickly, and I also would have pushed myself a little more to do little things a little differently, including obviously getting the editor, getting it out there, talking to more marketing people. And I think if I had put this on YouTube, maybe back then, I would have had an audience right now just building it from something. And because, I mean, not to sort of segue off into this, but I just want to tell you a really quick little anecdote. When I talked to other producers about this, they always said, hey, Dave, it's a cool idea. why don't you just take it and try to put it in one location, like one episode's in some guy's basement, one guy's here. And I said, the set is so expensive, I can't afford to keep it up. So after we're done filming, I was like, I have to bulldoze this thing, and it sucks, but that's just the way things are. And they said, well, can't you film it at someone else's house, do this or that? I said, believe me, I thought of this out of every angle you could think of, and it just wasn't going to be at that production level that I wanted it to be at.
And in distribution and finishing and marketing the project, what would you have done differently?
I would have just put it up earlier. I kind of just alluded to this in the question before. But honestly, if you have a movie out there, and there's a ton of movies that I know of that friends of mine have made that are sitting on some guy's hard drive, my advice is this: do yourself a favor, go watch a movie called American Movie.
Oh, so good. So good. So good. That one and Overnight. Those two.
Oh, that's a good double feature, man.
Oh,
that's a really good double feature.
If that doesn't scare the hell out of you from being a filmmaker, I don't know what will.
I mean, my God. I mean, he had the world by the balls, and he just destroyed.
This is Overnight, and I'll put links to both of these in the show notes, guys. Overnight is about Troy Duffy, a director who basically was given the key to Hollywood, and he literally screwed the pooch. I did an entire post, and I have a whole thing about that article about that. And then American Movie, though, please tell them a little bit about that movie, because it's so brilliant.
So American Movie is actually a documentary by this guy named Chris. I forget his last name. I'm sorry, but he was actually the director, following Mark Borshak and his friend Mike as they try to finish this movie, this short film they did called Coven, and it took them 2 years to make this. And you find out, like, why the hell does it take 2 years to make a movie? Well, it's because of stuff like this. And, Alex, that all happens in the movie. And it's like I always tell people, when you start making a movie or writing a script, there's the honeymoon phase, and that starts to fade. And then you're going to be on set and you're going to say, what the hell am I doing here? And that's that. And then you're going to get to the rocky parts. Those hard parts that you face, those really difficult situations and how things start to get tougher, that is life testing you out to make sure you really want to do this. If you ever get a chance, read a book called Resistance by Stephen Pressfield. I'm sorry, The Art of War by Stephen Pressfield.
Oh, yeah. I did a whole episode on that. The War of Art. The War of Art.
Yeah, did I say war? Did I say Art of War?
Yeah, The War of Art.
That's not so. That's Sun Tzu. Yeah, the war. Yeah, but yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It is brilliant. I read it one time, Alex, at a really bad part. I was really just down about different things at that point in time in my life, and I read it, and I said, "This man is a genius, a literal oracle giving advice from the top of a hill." And I reread the book as soon as I was done with it, and I said, this is exactly what I've been trying to say for years. He actually articulated it and put it into a book. I actually got to meet him one time. Phenomenal guy.
Oh, that must be amazing. Yeah, I did the same thing. I did that one, and then his sequel, Do the Work, which also great as well. No, Stephen Pressfield is amazing. Absolutely amazing. I actually have all 4 of his books on writing, which is, Do the Work, Turning Pro, and then the other one is it's like, I think it's called just Fool's Cap, which is about writing the legend of Bagger Vance. But Stephen actually one time went to on Oprah's show on her network, and he got to go to her private island in Hawaii. Of course. And he gets a boat ride there, and everyone on this island works for Oprah, and it's her private. It's a private beach. Everyone there works for her. She owns everything you see there. It's all her property. And Stephen was like, it was like surreal. It was like visiting a member Fantasy
of the
Island
royal family.
Yes, yeah, it's Fantasy Island. It's Fantasy Island.
It just, I'm Oprah. You're on my network, on my show, on my island. This is it. It's like, my God, this woman has it made.
Yeah, well, I mean, it took her a few years to get there. Without
Dave
question.
Chappelle had the right idea.
Yeah, exactly. It took her a few years to get there. So, what was the biggest takeaway from this entire experience for you?
Who I can trust and what I have to ask people, like what I know now what to look for. And I've taken this, I've honestly taken all my advice and I've actually used it. Since then, I get pitched a lot of projects, Alex, and I'm not trying to sound, like I'm anything, major or anything like that. I'm not, but I get pitched projects all the time and I always turn them down because I can tell you one of a couple of things. Number one is I can tell from the gate if you really are sincere about this project and what you expect from me. I mean, that's a big part of this. So when people go up, and I ask them, what do you think a producer does? What do you think a director of cinematography does? And you really start to understand, give people how they work, that flow of how they work. And most of the time, Alex, they come up to me and they're like, well, hey, look, you got all these connections, you got all this, you come on and, and you're going to be our producer. And I'm like, so basically I'm just shepherding you along. And then then you get all the glory and I'm all the guts. No thank you.
Got it. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. Now, what advice would you give a filmmaker just starting out in the business?
Don't do it. No, all kidding aside. Honestly, watch movies, and this is something that nobody else really talks about, but I'm going to give this piece of advice. Watch movies that you could make right now. And what I mean by that is watch Coven by Mark Bushett that I actually mentioned. Watch Paranormal Activity by Oren Patelli. Hell, Friday the 13th, Part 1.
Yeah, the Duplass brothers, the Swanbergs of the world, yeah.
And watch these movies and say, how did they do this for such a minimal budget? How did they do this stuff? And that's really what you should be focused on. Nobody should really watch movies like Inception and go, yep, you know what? I'm going to make Inception next weekend with my friends. We're all going to do this thing, and it's going to be great. And we're going to Sundance. We're going to make $10 million. And I mean, it's just
move to Beverly Hills, get the hot tub, and we're good.
Yep, that's it, man. The mansion and the hot tub. That's it.
Now, what's the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Patience. That's it, man. And it's a cruel mistress, and honestly, man, things always take longer than you think they're going to take. Even stuff that's slam dunks, like just something goes wrong. You have to go in with the best of intentions, whether you subscribe to the method of the secret or whatever. But imagine you got to attract the best, but you got to really prepare for the worst just in case it's going to happen, because it probably will, because you're making a movie. And just so always be ready for anything that's going to happen. I mean, that patience is key, because if you take a little longer to make a movie, you might you're probably going to make a better movie. Right. And now what I've done is I've actually stopped making things altogether. Just because I got frustrated, and I basically I just went back into screenwriting, as you know, and I just basically said I want to be able to do a lot more and get better at screenwriting, so that way when I do go out and do other projects, I'm a much better screenwriter. Because the producing and networking part, again, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I'm actually really good at that stuff. Just naturally, and it's just, but patience is really the key stuff.
What are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
Ooh, 3 of my favorite films of all time. I'm going to say Weekend at Bernie's.
Genius! Genius!
I am going to say Zodiac.
Yeah, genius as well.
And I'm going to say Dumb and Dumber.
Really? Dumb and Dumber, huh?
Yep. And if there's a bonus one, my favorite movie of all time is Big Trouble in Little China.
Well, that's just, of course. Of course, you have to put that in the list. Man, I can't even tell you what a blessing it's been to have you on the show, Dave, and you sharing your being so honest and brutal with yourself, and honest with the tribe, and really just exposing yourself, and not in that weird, creepy way, but in a really good, honest way that shows your failings in this project, and we've all gone through them. I've gone through them. I've spoken about them publicly many times. You have to fail, and you have to fail often to make it in this business, and get those failures out of the way as fast as possible. So that way you can learn from them and move on and just keep going. And I'm so grateful that you decided to come on my show and kind of share this whole journey with you. And look, I know a lot of people listening have similar journeys, have gone through this. It's not, this is not a unicorn story, unfortunately. This happens often. It happens daily, everywhere around the world. There's always something like this going on. But hopefully the tribe learned a little something from the mistakes you made along the way, and as you have along the way as well. So Where can people find you online, your websites, all that kind of good stuff?
You can find me at davebullis.com, and Twitter, it's at Dave_Bullis. If anyone listening ever wants to reach out to me just to say, hey, I really hated your episode on Alex Ferrari's podcast, please feel free. I'm going to be putting Game Over up online. If you want to check it out, if you're curious, if you want to ask questions, if you have questions about your project, honestly, please feel free to ask me. There's a ton of other stuff that I could give you info about, like how I found locations, all that good stuff. And Alex, I want to say thank you. I really, truly do. Your podcast, it's awesome. It's like a meteor, man. It's like flying through the atmosphere, and I'm that guy like looking at it through the telescope, like, hey, look at that, man. That's amazing.
I appreciate that very much, brother. I really do. And by the time this thing airs, we'll have a link, or actually the video, the pilot embedded in the show notes by the time this airs. So hopefully everybody will get to see this amazing piece of cinema and see what and see what came out of this, man. And you know what you did, but you know what the big thing that you did, man, is you went out and you did it. Whether you made it and you made something, and whether it lived up to your expectations or not, that's irrelevant. The point is that you went out, you moved, and that's 99% more than most in this business. So you should be very proud of that accomplishment alone, that you went into battle. Many people are afraid to even get out of their house and go into the battlefield, let alone going straight into the battle. And living there for many years. So congratulations on that accomplishment, sir.
Thank you, Alex. I really do appreciate that.
And thanks for being on the show, brother.
My pleasure, Alex. Take care, buddy.
Again, I want to thank Dave for coming on the show and literally just putting himself out there. So thank you, Dave, so much. I hope everybody listening and everyone in the tribe has learned what not to do when shooting a television pilot. But like I said before, a lot of the stuff that we talked about can easily be transferred over to feature films, short films, series, as well as commercials or music videos or anything that deals with production. A lot of these mistakes can be avoided. So I hope you learned something. Again, Dave, thank you very much. Now, if you want to watch the actual pilot for Game Over, head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/189 and enjoy it in all of its glory. And guys, yesterday was a big day. This Is Meg is now on Hulu in the US. So if you guys have Hulu, please go and watch it. Leave us a review on Hulu. That would be huge. We're going to be there for a year. We got a 12-month deal. And depending on how many people watch it and leave reviews and all sorts of good stuff, will determine if we get picked up again for another 12 months. So please check it out. I really appreciate it. And as always, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.